How did Canada respond to First Nation events that happened in the past? Ever since Jacques Cartier arrived to Canada in 1534, the First Nations haven't had the respect and integrity they've truly deserved. He took two of the First Nations home and taught them French so that they can come back to what is we know as modern Quebec and teach their community the language. Acts of this has happened a lot since. The First Nations have made many positive contributions to Canada, such as inventing the national summer sport and fighting in the War of 1812. They were the secret weapon against the Americans. In 1870, the very first residential school was opened for the First Nation kids. These schools lasted for over 100 years with the motive to kill the Aboriginal culture, language, and beliefs. In the 1870s, the Canadian government opened up the very first residential school with the attempt to kill the Aboriginal culture and teach them the Canadian culture and way. On October 23, 1966, the country of Canada lost an Aboriginal boy named Channy Wenjack due to residential schools. Channy Wenjack died walking home 200 kilometers from the residential school he was sent to. He died on a train track that led back to his hometown 200 kilometers away from the school he was sent to. Gord Downie of the Tragically Hip made a book in music called The Secret Path to honor Channy Wenjack and his rough life he had, and to make a difference. On the secret path, I will not be struck. I'm not going back. I be staring into space, forever or else. Enter the wilderness, and we only have ourselves. Even as the world consolves, don't stop wishing that what you wish. Even as the world consolves, don't stop wishing the things you wish. Don't stop wishing what you wish. These lyrics from Gord Downie help explain the views and the trouble that Channy Wenjack went through. Channy's legacy will be with Canada forever, and we will never forget him. In 1996, Roy Romanow, the Premier of Saskatchewan, shut down the last residential school. In the short story Borders, a small short story written by Thomas King, it is the story of a family crossing the border, and they identify themselves as Blackfoot, which is where they actually are from. They say this to make a point that they aren't Canadian or American, but they are Blackfoot. During this short story, there's a little bit of conflict between the security guard at the border and the people. Citizenship. Blackfoot. Is that Canadian or American? Blackfoot. As Canadians are taught about residential schools in grade 10 history class, I found it quite disturbing on what I was learning about. To see what my country was no better than what Hitler did to the Jewish. Hitler tried to eliminate Jewish culture and beliefs by sending them to camps. However, that is kind of the same as what the Canadian government did to the First Nations. The First Nations are always getting judged for their beliefs and lifestyle and living. Self-harm and suicide are the leading cause for the First Nations' death before the age of 44. In the spring of 2016, Attawabakasket First Nation Reserve in Ontario declared an emergency after 11 young people tried to commit suicide in one night, adding to the estimated 100 attempts made over 10 months among the community of 2,000 people. Not long after, 6 more people committed suicide, including 2 people under the age of 14. Canada doesn't do much about it, but just apologize to the First Nations. In 2008, ex-Prime Minister Stephen Harper apologized to the Aboriginal citizens of Canada for residential schools. However, he forgot to apologize to the Inuit, and the Nuttinakavut people of Newfoundland and Labrador. He did this because residential schools were set up in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador before the province joined the Confederation. The 5 residential schools that were operated in Newfoundland weren't run federally, so his government decided they shouldn't have to apologize, even though Newfoundland did because the rest of the country was. On Friday, November 24th, 2017, current Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, went to Newfoundland to go apologize to the certain groups that Stephen Harper didn't, saying that "we are sorry today is not enough. It will not undo the harm that was done to you. It will not bring back the languages and traditions you lost. It will not take away the isolation and vulnerability you felt when you separated from your families, communities, and cultures, the Prime Minister said. We share this burden with you by fully accepting our responsibilities and our failings as a government and as a country. At the end of the speech, the Prime Minister said, while we cannot forget the history that created these residential schools, we must not allow it to define the future. We call on all Canadians to take part in the next big chapter, a time where the Indigenous and the non-Indigenous people build the future we want together. The Pope also refused to apologize for residential schools, saying that it wasn't a fault of the Catholic Church. I believe that this is important to learn about, considering the fact these are the people that were on our country longer than we've been here. Besides that, the First Nations are just as much as a person as Justin Trudeau, myself, or Justin Bieber. They live in Canada and they have human rights. On December 10, 1948, Canada adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and clearly it didn't relate to the Aboriginal. These schools and ways Canada responded wasn't the way it should have been. If we looked at Article 12, it should have ended residential schools, as it says, no one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy, family, or home or correspondence. As a country, we should hold ourselves more accountable and help grow our nation as a unity.